Once again, local players, yeah, it is me and I'm default. Local games, nothing, new game, yes, was created for me. Can we see? Yes, we can see. And export game. Current game exported. So let's exit this game. Rerun. Local games. We can see that the game was exported. There is no asterisk, so we can assume that it is not loaded right now, which is absolutely fine because for loading game we have a separate command. So let's implement it right now. And in our menu we expect we have this case. We expect one parameter. If the first parameter is empty, we will display this message to end user. If not, we will try to load it. This function is missing, so let's add it. And that's how this loader looks like. As you may see, it may return null because it might happen that we will not find any details about the given ID for the given ID. Based on this ID and this pattern, we prepare a file name. We check if file exists, load the content. We know this is JSON, so we try to decode this. We have data. We already know that how this data looks like. So we load the game data. We create a game with the given ID. We store also information about the board. We store information about the cast link, and here should be cast link for player number 2. We load a list of moves. We set also information if this is the turn of the player number 1, based on if the current player is the same as the player 1. We set players 1 and 2. If there is no player 1, we create instance for this player, set it. If there's no player number 2, it can be remote player because we don't have information about the remote players, so we set it. Here we have list of our games, so we try to find, because maybe we have already this game on our list. If so, then we just override by the new data. If not, then we would like to add this at the end of the list, and we set the current player to the current player of the loaded game. So how this function looks like? It is a very simple function or method. We provide ID of the game. We are looking for this ID in this list. If exists, we return index. If not, we return size. So this will be added at the end of the game's array. So now we should be able to create a game, export this game, and load it again. Okay, so let's see local players. Yes, still me. Local games. And there is a game called game. Let's mark it and try to load it. Game loaded. Let's see board. Okay, let's make a move A2 to A3, export game, and there is no running game to export, so there is something wrong. It seems that local has no set current game. We load game, go to this function, load the game, current game should be set. Okay, apparently there was no error in my code. There's something weird in the console. So let's list games again. I had to rename this file to have 1 instead of 0. Otherwise, I couldn't load this file. Let's see, load game. Yeah, now it's correct. If I will replace this by 0, the 0 will be omitted here, and that's obviously incorrect game ID, so file cannot be found, and that leads us to all other errors. Game was loaded. Yes, and current game was exported correctly. So let's see a board. Let's make a move A2 to A3. Okay, export game, exported, exit. Yes, we have our game file, list of our games and our players. So let's start local games. See board, nothing special, this is default board. Let's load it again, game loaded, see how the board looks like, and it's still wrong. Now it's time to verify why this game was wrong, but before we do this, let's improve our user interface. Here will be a list of our local games. If the current game, from the list, is our current game, we will display asterisk, the same as we do with the player, to make sure that it works correctly. And we display this message, game loaded, regardless of the result. So if game was loaded, then display this one, otherwise couldn't be loaded. And that should improve user experience a little bit. So let's see, local games, this is our game, let's copy its ID, load game, game loaded, let's see, local games, yes, it's loaded, there's asterisks, so it's fine. So let's see why the board is the default one. To figure out why we display the wrong board, we need to go to the part that is responsible for it. Yeah, so we have a game, we have a perform action, here we make a moves, and here we have a print board. So we take a game and we print its board. What is wrong with it? The thing is that this is game created at the very beginning when we start our application, so it doesn't make sense anymore, because we do not create games like this any longer. For this we have a local that provides us information about all games and the currently running game. So we cannot pass games anymore. We need to pass our local. There is a small snippet. So if there is no currently running game, so there's what we can consider as a current game, we return a 100. And the same, if there is no player, we will return 103. If there is a game and there is a player assigned, then we can make a move. In a print board, this variable doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, same here. So here we have local, also local. Okay. We can fix it in this way, which means that we take a player from the current game, and also if the king is in check, we will display this asterisk to emphasize that the king needs to be somehow protected. So how is it possible that we have actually an object, right? This is a current player. So let's go to the definition of our player, and here we have one of the PHP's magic functions, toString. So every time we're trying to echo our object, it will take a string returned by this function. So in this case, it's a name. So we will display a username with optional asterisks if that's the case. I hope that we are safe, so we can test it again. Local games, not loaded. Game loaded. and see board, and the board is still wrong. Okay, so issue found. Here we have perform action, which is responsible for making all the movements. So we take we check if there is a current game. If it's not, we return a 100. But then, if the game exists, but the current player may it switches between player 1 and player 2. Yeah, the current player is the player that is going to make a move. So if we create a game, we have only one player, and we make a move. There's no a second player. So in this case, we return 103. So I had to add this block in this try catch block. So if the result is different than 100, and there is a, so we have in case of no player, no second player, we will get 103, yeah, which is different than 100, and we will have a current game. So in this context, in this case, we check if there is a winner. We know that the winner is optional, and the winner will be set at the very end. So here we display name, so we can also remove this. It will work the same way, because we know the winner is a type of chess player, and we have this toString magic method, so this is kind of redundant, but we can keep it as it is right now. But if there's no second player, we display a message that the game has to be exported to other player to continue this game. So having this done, I also added this condition to back to menu. We should be ready to play. So let's list our games. There is our game. Let's load it, and let's display a board. Yeah, so there is my move, and we can see in brackets there is no second player, so the second player is invalid. Probably you can break it right now. No, we cannot make this move. We have to add a new player, but we don't have it implemented yet, so let's add it as a next step. So here we have our case for missing player. We check if there is a current game. If there is no, we will just display information to the user. There is no running game, so we cannot add the user to a not existing game. If the game exists and there is a player 1 and there is player 2, we also cannot add more players to the game. So in other case, we check if we have local players. If so, we can add one of them to the game. We take a player. We are trying to find it based on the provided ID. So this is defined player. If the player exists and there is no player 1, we set this as player 1. If there is no player 2, we will set this as a player 2. And let's see a list of our players. There is just one. Let's create a new player, player 2. New player created. Players. Then the dwarf is still the current player, but we have a list of 2. So now we can check our games. Local games. There is 1. So let's mark it. Load game. It's loaded. Yeah, we can see this mark. And now we are going to add missing player to our game. But first we need to fetch this user's ID. Oh, this player wasn't found. Yeah, this is exactly the same case as I had previously. There's a 0, and for some reason it's removed from it. So new player 3. Yeah, so let's try to add a new player. Player 3. Added. Okay, it has 0 as well, so probably we'll have the same issue. Yeah, so that's a pretty dummy thing from the console. No idea why, but we have our players here. That's our JSON file. So we have a default player, and there is a list of players. So what we can do, we can go here and we can replace those zeros by ones manually, and that should be it. Yeah, those zeros were replaced. Okay, there's one more 0, but this one has no more zeros. Yeah, and player 2 was added to the game. As you might see, we had a fatal error in this line, so we can make it null safe by adding this question mark. And this is not enough, because we also have to make this player optional with the default null value. Of course, that's not the solution. I mean, it's not the long-term solution, and we have to know why did it happen. So in my case, problem was with this get C function that was trimming zeros. So then I modified some entries manually, and that's why all the identifiers became inconsistent. But every time we load games here, we load the whole file with all the players. But then if we go to export game, we export the single game, but then we export all the files. So we take, all the games. So we take all games and we serialize every game, every player, and so on. So that's why, even though the missing ID was in a other game that I was currently playing, it causes the issue because this player wasn't set properly. So I think that's it for this episode. The next episode will be the very last one. We will wrap up all what we learned here, but I think that for now it's enough. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.